Hello everyone, welcome to Hello Kindness. Today, together, we're going to explore the law of correspondence. So what does that mean? Think of it this way. What happens on a smaller scale, the things that happen to us, also happens on a bigger scale and vice versa. And there's a quote that is very important that it teaches, it says this: as above, so below. As below, so above. So when you think about like different levels of things that we see, what happens within ourselves or what happens to our body, the activities, also when you think about it, similarly, it also happens to our families, our societies and systems. So we're going to share different examples about that. And then the second focus of today is all these things that we see around us, our surrounding, it appears to us in our physical world. But the law of correspondence goes further than that. It teaches us that what happens in the physical material dimension also happens in the mental and spiritual dimension. So those are the two focus today. First, we're going to share some examples of how we, in everyday experience, see how this principle is at work. And then we move across to the three greater planes, like what happens in the material world also happens in the mental dimension and spiritual dimension. So let's get started. So on a smaller scale, like within our body, you can tell that when our body cells do not work together, we don't feel well. It's not very difficult to understand. So something for us to think about is, what can we do individually? What kind of habits that we can do to make our entire system better? For example, better diet, better quality of our sleep. All these things will help the body as a whole. And then moving from the body cells and leading into like an individual person within families. Think of family members, siblings, immediate family, and extended family. Think of them, each member is like an individual body cells. What happens when we are all in a harmony? We are there to listen with each other. We're there to show our gratitude for each other. Then typically the family as a whole functions really well. It's in a harmony. But what if there's like a constant argument between family members and we feel that we don't need to take the effort to listen? What will happen? There will be a lot of arguments, right? So to begin, the law of correspondence, we can think of it this way. In our body, there are millions, billions of body cells. When these cells work together, it doesn't take a huge deal of science to know that we are going to be healthier. But when these cells don't work together, let's say when your kidney is not working well with your liver, or your red blood cells are not working together with your white blood cells, what will happen in the whole system? We're probably going to feel sick and get ill and not going to function well, right? And there's a story that I can share. My son and I, we go through stages, right? He's just like an 11-year-old. And at one point, we decided to, okay, when there's like an argument, what should we do? When we come to a point that we feel like, okay, we're not listening to each other, we agree that we will stop there and then find another opportunity to come back when both of us are more ready to talk. So the willingness to stop, to pause, is a way that we show respect. It's a way that we are telling each other that we care about each other, but maybe at that time it's not the right moment for us to communicate. We agree that we will find another time to talk about it. So I think just like the body and the family members' relationship, sometimes we get sick but it is an opportunity for us to get stronger, to build up our immunity. Same as within a family, sometimes arguments, difficult challenges is an opportunity for us to thrive, to put in the time and effort to nourish the relationship. But I think it is because when there's a prolonged conflict or when there's a prolonged situation in our body, that the cells are continuously in a long period of time not working together, then it becomes a very, very big problem to deal with. Such as, and the same applies to our family members or siblings, father and son, mother and daughter, like, or extended family. When there's a prolonged conflict that we are not willing to put in the time, the effort to reconcile, to learn to understand each other, to share our own point of view, and be there to listen and be there to show that you really care. But maybe there are just different perceptions on things, but it is not a problem that cannot be reconciled. Maybe it's not a problem that is about right or wrong. Maybe it is simply a situation that allow us to develop more greater and greater meanings behind them. So what happens in our body also on a greater scale also happens in our family. Now, let's scale up to society and system. What happens, or what do we see in our society? We can take simply the political systems. Remember what we said in our family? We all know we should work together. We all know that it is better for us to listen, to learn to be grateful, and to be there for our family. But do we do that on a greater scale in terms of our political system nowadays? Not just in the US, maybe in many, many other countries. We all know that working together is the best way to thrive, to become a better version of ourselves. But when we see our systems are not following this principle, what happens? There will be a lot of dysfunction in our system and in our society. So again, the law of correspondence say that what happens on a smaller scale in the body, in the cells, and also happens in our families and individuals, also happen in a greater scale, such as our society and system. So there are some questions for us to ponder and to contemplate, and they are: what do we notice in our society today? Are there systems that are stuck or dysfunctional because different groups won't cooperate? What can we learn from how small units like body cells and families operate to help larger systems like societies to function better? I think these are really important things that we notice, but we just don't seem to find a way to consistently move forward at times. And oftentimes I think it is because of our collective awareness is obscured by our own ignorance. To be honest, when we teach, if you have children, we always teach our children, hey, be kind to your friends, be kind to your siblings, learn to play respectfully, etc. But as leaders, do we do that across the board? Do we do that? Can we honestly, what we witness in the system of things, do we see that? Or do we see we are constantly arguing? Okay, so I think it is sometimes the challenge is our collective awareness is obscured by our own ignorance. We think that when we win and the other side has to lose, then things will be better. But is that really the case? Or are we a part of the whole system? When we are able to work together, that we collectively, we will thrive. So that's a question. Can we really thrive when we choose to sabotage each other? So moving on to the 3 greater planes. In the beginning of this video, we talk about how our body cells work to individuals and families, and then to societies and systems. These principles or these examples are easier to understand because we witness them every day. They're up here in the physical and material dimension. But the three greater planes also talk about what happens on the material plane, also happens in the mental plane, and also the spiritual plane, or you can call the plane as dimension. Moving on to the mental dimension, I will use this example. I think we all experience at times stressful situations at work. We might feel a group of people are wrongfully accusing you, or you might feel like it is unfair. There's a type of prejudice at work. In the mental plane, it talks about how do you want to deal with it? Do you want to feel more empowered, or do you want to feel more victimized? And it is really up to us. When we choose the first, to feel more empowered, we start to not blame people. We might see that we're able to forget and forgive their own ignorance because they do not know better. First is, when we constantly feel that it is unfair, what can you do? You have a couple choices. You can leave that position and find a better opportunity elsewhere, or you can find a productive way, whatever that they may be, and to improve the situations. One, you'll feel more empowered, and then continue to find a solution for yourself. The second is you continue to feel victimized and you feel like it is unfair. But one is more negative and one is more positive. So it is really up to us of what we want to choose. And this also applies to the collective ideology. The example I just shared at work applies to one person individually, but we can also talk about this and expand this to a collective ideology, like how relationships between countries, foreign policies, how do we want to behave, and what type of strategies or approach we want to implement in our foreign policy between different countries. Do you want to implement an approach that is more compassionate and accountability versus one that we blame our many things to what other countries are doing to us? So this is a choice that we can make. What is the collective ideology or the collective principles that we have in our mind? When more and more of us take on the responsibility and want to become the best version of ourselves, we might decide to choose an approach that is more compassionate and feel like as long as we become the best version of ourselves, it becomes an opportunity for other countries to admire us. Versus we blame everything that we are not doing well to other countries. We become more of the victimized identity. So collectively and individually, the law of correspondence is at work. So lastly, moving on to the spiritual plane. Based on the law of correspondence, what happens in the material world and the mental dimension also is at work in the spiritual dimension. By using an example, how two different persons experience challenges, goodness, everything that happens in their own experience. How they create the meaning and how they connect their experience to the purpose in life, like how that transcend into experiences that is greater than themselves. I think there's a big key or relationship to that. One, for example, may experience hardship, pulling himself or herself down, unable to create the meaning to move them higher and experiences life more gracefully. Versus another person who experienced very similar hardship and life experiences and is able to tap into the greater spiritual teaching that each challenges and hardship is for him to create better meanings that nourish themselves and move them to lead their life more joyfully. So I think we as individuals have the ability to create the meaning that we want, to create the purpose that we want, and also to derive how we are all interconnected based on our experiences. And the law of correspondence teaches us that, again, what happens on the physical world, the mental world, also appear in the spiritual world. So do we choose to touch base of our spiritual dimension in a positive, life supportive way? First is, do we choose to individually engage our spiritual dimension in a negative and life depriving way? So it's really up to us. And again, what happens on a smaller scale as below, so above, collectively, as a group of people or as a society, what is our spiritual well-being right now? How do we want to move forward? Do we have or currently lack a collective spiritual dimension that will help us move forward? Okay, what is the state we are at right now? How do we want to move forward is really up to us. Do we choose in a way that we want to help each other up as a collective group to move higher and higher up on the spiritual dimension, to find a greater purpose in life collectively? It's really up to us. And I think that's the beauty of this teaching, the law of correspondence, that what happens below happens above and across different planes. So in conclusion, I want to summarize what we talked about today. The law of correspondence teaches us that patterns repeat across different planes. We talk about the physical plane, the mental plane, and the spiritual plane. And also what happens at the smallest level, whether it's within ourselves, like the body cells, reflect on a larger scales like families and societies. Again, today I am very grateful that I have this opportunity to share the law of correspondence with you. I would really, really love your comment to help me out as a content creator of how else I can improve and what are other topics that you will be interested for me to share and to explore with you together. So if you haven't subscribed yet and you find any value in this video, I hope you can click the subscribe button and drop down your comment. Thank you very much.